Lawmakers who have been shopping various amnesties for years focus most of their empathy and concern on illegal immigrants who fear deportation, not on Americans whose lives have been devastated by illegal immigrant crime. President Trump, however, hasn't forgotten those people, and today he focused on closing immigration loopholes to keep groups like MS-13 out of our country. As for the Democrats refusing to come to the table, Trump's willing to play hardball.
If we don't change the legislation, if we don't get rid of these loopholes where killers are allowed to come into our country and continue to kill gang members, and we're just talking about MS-13, there are many gang members that we don't even mention. If we don't change it, let's have a shutdown. We'll do a shutdown, and it's worth it for our country. I'd love to see a shutdown if we don't get this stuff taken care of.
That left is going crazy because he said that. But that's how much he cares about the country. He cares about our safety, the rule of law. The president knows that the people are with him on this issue. When you look at the poll numbers, Americans want sensible immigration reforms along with maybe curing the DACA problem. Okay. Here's a recent Harvard-Harris poll. It found that 65% of voters agreed that any bill granting legal status to Dreamers should be accompanied by funding for a wall, an end to chain migration, as well as an end to the visa lottery system. 53% supported building a border wall consisting of physical and electronic barriers. And a whopping 79% wanted immigration to be based on merit, not on family connections or other factors. Well, I'm assuming neither senator from Arizona bothered to consider the new comprehensive study by economist John Lott, who will join us later in the show. Professor Lott basically looked at all the illegals who entered the Arizona state prison system from the years 1985 through 2017. That's 33 years of data. And what did he find? He says illegals were at least 142% more likely to be convicted of a crime than other Arizonans. He found their sentences were 10.5% longer than U.S. citizens due to the severity of their crimes. He found that illegals were 163% more likely to be convicted of first-degree murder than U.S. citizens, 168% more likely to be convicted of second-degree murder, 189.6% more likely to be convicted of manslaughter. Illegals were much more likely to commit sexual offenses against minors, sexual assault, DUI, and armed robbery. And 45.4% of illegal immigrants were more likely than other criminals to have been gang members. My goodness. Here's a smattering of how just in the past week, illegals have added to the health and well-being of their communities. On Monday, in Hartford, Connecticut, where I come from, Onel Arana Gervasio, a Mexican illegal, pled guilty to being part of a heroin ring that extended to Alabama, in Connecticut, Rhode Island, Ohio, and guess what? He's a boomerang visitor. He was already deported back in 2013. Then there's this charmer, Salvador Gomez Lopez of Montgomery County, Maryland, right nearby where I'm broadcasting from. The Salvadoran illegal was urinating in public, lovely, when a bystander tried to convince him to pull up his pants and find a bathroom. Instead, Gomez pulled a box cutter out and started slashing at the poor man's throat. There's a lot of gashes there now. Last week, 3 Dreamers were arrested in 3 different smuggling cases. All were DACA recipients. They were smuggling human beings. 2 were nabbed in California and 1 in Arizona. And this is a heartbreaker. 5 days ago in Rio Vista, Texas, a young mother of 2, Jennifer Smith, on her way to pick up her kids at school, was killed in a horrific car crash by illegal immigrant Candido Martinez Ramirez, 32 years old. He was drunk. And this past Sunday, many of you have heard, Indiana Colts linebacker Edwin Jackson and his Uber driver were killed by an illegal, intoxicated alien. 37-year-old Manuel Orrego Salvala, the DOJ announcing in just the last hour that they will bring federal charges against the Guatemalan, proving once again that Jeff Sessions, his attorney general, and his DOJ are moving quickly to right the wrongs of the past when it comes to illegal crime going unpunished. No more. Sessions is right. This has to stop. Look at these cases. It's just a few. It's just the last week. We could do a whole show on this. When you really start to think about it, it's total insanity. We have enough problems in our country with drugs, the opioid epidemic, alcohol, criminal activity. We sure do not need any more. And yes, of course, all illegal immigrants are not criminals, but frankly, that's not the point. Because that's of little comfort to Jennifer Smith's sons, or Edwin Jackson's mother, or the thousands of Americans whose names you do not know, whose lives will never be the same again because our government was unwilling or unable to enforce our laws. And that's the angle. We have with us tonight someone who has suffered terribly because of illegal immigrant crime. Sergeant Brandon Mendoza was a 13-year veteran of the Mesa Police Department in Arizona. On May 12, 2014, he was hit head-on and killed by a drunk driver heading the wrong way on a freeway. The driver had been in the country illegally for more than 20 years. Sergeant Mendoza's mother, Marianne, joins us now in the studio. It is great to see you. Thank you for being here. We've talked a couple of times over the years because of your testimony about your son and what he represents, his story, the kind of man he was. And I'm so impressed with your poise and your dedication to continuing his memory and maybe help us learn something here. You heard what I said in the monologue. What is your reaction?
I'm very disappointed in the senators, that represent Arizona to begin with. They've had this type of information readily available, and they choose to ignore it, and they choose to act like Arizona does not have a problem, and we have a huge problem. And I thank you so much for bringing attention to so many of the deaths that have happened in the last couple weeks. This happens so much. More people are killed yearly by illegal aliens in the United States than were killed on 9/11. And this is what people don't understand. It's a slow, methodical, continual thing all year long.
And when you think about the critics of President Trump for bringing this issue to light, they say, well, you're painting with a broad brush. Not all illegal immigrants commit these types of crime. They're people just coming here to have a better life. What do you say?
That's true. But, a lot of these people who killed our children came here for a better life, and something happened. And the politicians in Washington right now, they're the very ones who are giving this monster a voice and letting these illegals think that they have a right to demand what they're demanding from our politicians. They have no place in American politics. None.
And does it elicit a strong reaction from you? I imagine it does, when you see the American media so heavily invested in covering the stories of illegal immigrants who fear deportation. I mean, almost every day. I mean, on radio, we call them immigration sob stories. Yet your story, the stories of so many other mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters like you, without President Trump and maybe talk radio, maybe Fox, I don't know where they get a voice.
We don't. And that's the unfortunate thing, because the liberal media and most publications in the United States only publish those type of stories. It tries to evoke, sympathy to fit their agenda.
Do you not deserve sympathy?
Absolutely, 100%. I'm more angry now than wanting sympathy, because I feel for my fellow Americans who are in the future going to be affected by illegal alien crime. And that's what each and every one of us at AVAC stand up for. That's why we're fighting the fight we fight. We don't want this to happen to another family. And I put a message out to the politicians, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. Which child of yours would you look in the eye and decide that they're the ones who you give up to an illegal alien criminal to support the agenda that you're supporting?
I mean, it sounds harsh to say that, but it does seem
that's what they had us do.
They are willing to say, well, this is just going to be the price that we have to pay.
Collateral damage.
In order to be a welcoming, open country, the Statue of Liberty, bringing me tired, you're poor. I mean, it's almost like that's where we are, because they turn their head away from your story.
Right.
And so many others like you. And Arizona, this is what drives me crazy. John McCain, God bless him, I know he's suffering with cancer and it's a horrible thing. But John McCain is coming back for another bite at the apple, pushing this huge amnesty, no border wall.
Right.
No end to chain migration. I don't think real change of visa lottery that it's significant. Jeff Flake, who's very unpopular in your state, he's retiring because he's so unpopular. Another big pro-illegal immigrant senator. And yet Arizona is ground zero for illegal immigration. I don't understand. And so many people I meet say, how are these guys representing us? How are they representing? I mean, it's stunning to me.
It's a lasting impression that Jeff Flake's going to give, you know, the type of legislation that he's going for. And unfortunately, the same with John McCain. But the thing is, this has been a problem for 20 or 30 years in Washington. The immigration problem cannot be fixed. The illegal alien problem cannot be fixed until they start at the beginning and get rid of the criminals, secure our borders. They come back over repeatedly. You can't fix DACA and Dreamers without having a hand on what's happening with all the criminals in our country. You have to get rid of them, and you have to protect Americans. We need to come first.
Marianne, thank you so much for joining us. And we will not forget your son, Brandon. Thank you so much. And the man who compiled the most comprehensive look at illegal immigrants and crime has come under fire by open border advocates. Here to defend his study is John Lott of the Crime Prevention Research Center, along with immigration attorney Lott and Orr. Professor Lott, let's start with you because you've been doing a lot of research over the years about different topics, guns and violent crime, and now you focused on Arizona. And you heard Marianne Mendoza, who will always be a grieving mother, who's turning her sadness into righteous anger, impatient for results. But your study looked at 33 years of statistics. Tell me about your methodology, because it's coming under assault.
Right. Well, there have been a lot of studies that have been done on illegal immigrants and crime. The problem has been the data with those have relied either on survey data, which is pretty problematic if you're going to be asking somebody whether they're here illegally and whether they have a past criminal history, or they've mixed together pretty much completely both legal and illegal immigrants. And I believe the data for Arizona shows that illegal immigrants are much more likely to commit crime, but legal immigrants tend to be very law-abiding. And if you mix the two together, you're going to miss a lot of that difference. The nice thing about Arizona's data is that they've done by far the best job that I've seen in terms of separating out those different groups. And what you find is that, as you mentioned, that they're much more likely to commit crime.
I find to be outrageous.
About 12% of the state prison population, where illegal immigrants make about 4.8% of the state population. That's particularly imbalanced when you look at young criminals. Those under 35, illegal immigrants make about 8% of the prison population, but only 2% of the state population.
All right, let's go to Alan. Alan, you have concerns about this study. We'll put up the graphic in a moment. But you find it to be...
I can't hear anything, guys.
I lost the signal here.
Well, I think we might be having an issue with this. But let's put up the full graphic of what we learned from John Lott's study, because I think the Fox viewers need to see this. Here it is. 142% more likely to be convicted of a crime, illegal immigrants in Arizona. They tend to commit more serious crimes. They serve 10.5% longer sentences, more likely to be classified as dangerous, 45% more likely to be gang members than U.S. citizens. Marianne, we're going to try to get our sound back on our guests, but I don't find this surprising at all. And John Lott's getting hammered out there because he looked at the data and he came up with a way of analyzing it to try to separate out green card holders who are legally here and illegal immigrants. And my question, and you must have some thoughts on this, how is this not already readily available? Why do we need a professor of economics to have to go into the database for 33 years in Arizona? Why don't we know these facts? Well, it's like they're being purposely kept from the American people. This drives me crazy. I'm always trying to find out the status of these people committing crimes. Like, oh, we can't report that. What?
We have somebody in Oregon who is able to get us those kind of statistics, too. And this was the first report from any other state than Oregon that was able to do this. And we thank them. Yeah, it's about time. I think we have Professor Lott and Alan back with us. Alan, let's go to you. You have some concerns about John Lott's study. And by the way, John, I thought you were just talking over me earlier. I'm like, God, he doesn't even hear what I'm saying. So, forgive the audio. This is live TV. Alan, let's talk to you about the methodology without getting too wonky.
He
Sure.
paints a picture of illegal immigrants more likely to commit violent crime, more likely to be incarcerated for these crimes, murder, manslaughter, first degree, second degree. Why do you dispute this?
Well, it's easily disputed because the methodology just doesn't work. It's inconsistent with every other study that's been performed over the last couple of decades, as well as data from the American Immigration Association, as well as the Immigration Council, which shows that immigrants actually do less crime.
They're all
and the types of crimes.
pro-immigration, though, right?
Well,
Those groups
also,
are all pro-immigration.
Well, I don't think they're necessarily pro-immigration. They're pro-American. But also, Cato Institute has also gone after the site for sort of saying that there's statistical data information. So, I mean,
Cato
it's not.
Institute? You got to be kidding me. Alan, you got to do better than Cato. Cato is notoriously open borders. I mean, they dine out on China trade and open borders, okay?
Well, we're not talking about
they're good
just
on taxes. They're terrible on the other two issues.
We're not talking about just open borders. We're talking about actual information here. And John, there's no way for John to actually have the data to show who was an undocumented and who was a legal immigrant. His data is really skewed information from over a large time period, which just dumps Americans, naturalized citizens, as well as people who were here on a green card who were in these removal proceedings, which make the numbers hyper.
All right, John, respond quickly to that criticism, please.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of points they just brought up. What I was trying to say earlier is that there are a lot of studies that have been done, but the problem is that those studies completely mix together legal and illegal immigrants, or they do surveys. Well, in the case of Arizona, you have pre-sentencing reports that are done that determines whether or not what their citizenship status is. That's included in the data that's here. Now, you know, there may be some issues that one can say that they may have made mistakes in some cases, but even if you believe that's the case, and I doubt that, the most you're talking about is about 10% of the sample that's there. And that's very small. That's a much smaller error than any of the other data that you've been pointing to.
All right, guys, fascinating. We're going to continue to debate this, no doubt. I think we need more transparency, more reporting, more truth. And the localities, the state should have to reveal and keep a database on who is committing the crime in the United States. The American people, I think, demand to know. Marianne, I know you do.